Yo, what is going on, fellow psychonauts, druggies, and the rest alike? I am someone that's no one here, just another soul traveling on this journey called life. Today we are here to discuss natural psychedelics versus synthesized psychedelics. Basically, we will just get into my personal experience between the two, but also some helpful information for you guys out there. If you want to see more videos like this, just let me know in the comments, and also let me know which kind you prefer. And sub if you like the content, like if you like the content, and without further ado, let's get right into it. So, keeping it simple, for those of you who might not know, there are hundreds of different psychedelics, most that have been synthesized, and this should go without saying, but I have not tried them all, so don't expect us to get into 4-HO, MIPT, or like 2CB fly or some shit like that. If you'd like to see more on those substances or a specific substance in general, just let me know. But in this video, we're going to keep it to the basics and the natural psychedelics, including magic mushrooms, DMT, LSA, and peyote. The synthesized, including 4-ACO DMT, DMT again, LSD, and DPT. Some of these you might not have heard of, but I think these will serve as good examples for this subject. Now, we can dive deeper or expand the topic outwards to other classes of drugs as well, and ultimately, it'll be up to you guys. So, what is the difference? In all honesty, there could be no difference between the two, natural and synthesized. Why? Well, because of science, okay? So, if we wish, we could extract psilocin from magic mushrooms, and that would be considered synthesized mushrooms, and the psychoactive compound itself shouldn't have changed. Same with peyote. You can get mescaline, which is the psychoactive compound, and isolate it and take that by itself, and you should still get the same psychedelic effect. In that sense, they are the same whether it is organic or made by man. But if we were just going to settle with that, that would defeat the purpose of this video. Shrooms and 4-ACO DMT. 4-ACO DMT is considered by many to be synthetic mushrooms, and I can definitely see where they're coming from, and my experience between shrooms and 4-ACO are they're the same kind of trip, a shroom trip. If you were to blind test me and I would have to guess which one is which, I would only be able to tell by the method of ingestion. Shrooms you generally eat in a sandwich or whatever, and 4-ACO you just kind of take. It's a small powder and it can be in a capsule, but at that point I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the trip. But they both have a similar duration, they both get me slumped and kind of euphoric, and both I enjoy very much. As far as the trip goes, they both, at least to me, have little to no differences. You might get some nausea on shrooms, but not so much on 4-ACO. But for me, I can handle either just fine, and both are metabolized into psilocin, which gives you the trip, but it is said there are more alkaloids found in mushrooms that can provide a different trip than 4-ACO. I've yet to experience that difference. Ayahuasca and DMT. DMT can go either way, but has traditionally been used as ayahuasca by native tribes for thousands of years in their rituals. DMT can be found in all kinds of plants and different kinds of living beings in our brains, for example, but to get a hold of DMT, the DMT that you have to smoke, an extraction process must be taking place first. That or it can be synthesized in a lab. Either way, if you're smoking DMT, there shouldn't be a difference, but what comes into play is the ayahuasca, and you can argue that this isn't a natural psychedelic since it's a cooking process, and it isn't exactly just DMT. You need an MAOI, Syrian rue in many cases, to activate it. Ayahuasca will provide a much longer trip than DMT basically, and there's also getting it all down, which can be a challenge. The purging is common with Aya, and I think there is just more of this kind of natural healing process with ayahuasca that many people tend to find. LSD and LSA. So here's where we start to see the difference. Now, I'm sure just about all of you have heard of LSD, but LSA is what I like to call a natural acid. It's found in morning glories or Hawaiian baby wood rose. When I first found out about it, I was like, what? Because it was natural occurring acid and I couldn't get LSD, so I went for the LSA. Similar name, but boy, they are fucking different. The nausea is terrible, horrendous on LSD. In all honesty, it's probably the worst nausea I've ever experienced. But also there's vasoconstriction, and personally I haven't had a problem from that, but I hear it can be pretty bad. LSD acts more as a sedative while LSD is prominently stimulating, but this depends. I've had LSD feel like LSD in the stimulating way, but it depends on the setting, the set you're in. But with LSD, you shouldn't have any troubles falling asleep. But LSD doesn't come with the visual, colory, playful feeling acid does. It is more of a teacher, and I would set it alongside probably Shrooms in the way it acts. The headspace is probably the strongest part of the trip, but the visuals are possible, I found, with the use of marijuana, and it depends whether you decide to take that or not. But just from those differences, you should be able to see that these compounds, though both in the lysergamide class, they are actually really different. Peyote and DPT. Now you may be wondering, why the hell are we even comparing these two? Shouldn't it be like peyote and mescaline, or DPT and DMT? Yes and no to that. We are comparing these because I wanted to compare two completely different substances just based on one being natural and the other being not natural, and just based off the main question of this video. So with this, we won't get into the specific effects of each substance, but rather what the trip is more like and base it off of that. With DPT, it's more of this futuristic feeling to it. It definitely, at least for me, leans towards a more industrial feeling, like it is some big science fiction movie that you go through, but it would depend if you break through or not. Without a breakthrough, the hallucinations still definitely have this futuristic feeling, somewhat of a metallic feeling that would discomfort some. Some hallucinations I've had were alien-like. I've had things turn into pixels. Futuristic entities would be common on a breakthrough, and a breakthrough could be a haywire Looney Tunes world with chaos everywhere. But it also depends on personal insights, I feel. I personally think there's a lot to be earned from this substance. Bizarre is a very fitting word for it. You may have noticed somewhat of a trend with the natural psychedelics at this point being more sedating and relaxing, but moving on to mescaline, it's more like a stimulant actually. Now mescaline isn't something I've done, so for the sake of this video, we have my friend Lalo here to share his experience with peyote.
Alright, so I live in Mexico, and an aunt of mine invited me to a peyote ceremony a couple of months ago. My uncle organizes it, and it sounded like a great idea. So I was working as a waiter at the time, and my shift ended at 8 p.m. I left my shift and drove outside of the city to some small mound. There was a teepee there. I entered the teepee, and my uncle told me to sit down wherever I liked, but I had to sit in some part of the circle of people going around the teepee, and I could only walk clockwise. In the middle of the tent, there was a fireplace with a Native American at the door of the teepee feeding logs to a fire. So at around 11 p.m., we were all set. My uncle started giving us a speech saying that the peyote is a secret plant, that it has a spirit, and that if we allow it to, it can heal us of anything. That is why the people call the peyote medicine and sometimes grandfather, which was because, as my uncle explained, it is the father of our fathers and it shows us the way. So, we started smoking some tobacco, and my uncle was asking everyone to pray. I'm not a very religious person, but I tried to pray because I was in the moment. I was asking for whatever existed to show itself to me, if it existed. After a large amount of tobacco, they started passing a ball around the circle with the peyote in it. The peyote we took in that ceremony was dried and pulverized, and we have to put the peyote, which was pretty bad tasting to be honest, in our mouth and chew it until we couldn't handle the flavor anymore. And then we should swallow it with tea that was getting passed through. What I didn't know at the time was that the tea had more peyote in it. I took around 4 teaspoons on that first round of there was an elder in the TP who took, how much was it? I think 6 or 7 teaspoons. Most people only took 1 or 2, so I was one of the first ones to take it. And once I realized maybe I took a little bit too much, I started getting a little bit anxious and excited. But well, I really had no idea. Uh, there were 4 rounds of peyote throughout the night, from around 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., and it was one of the most intense experiences that I've ever had. It didn't feel like anything but nausea for the first hour and a half. The people around me kept singing weird songs. They had some drums and like some weird instruments I'd never seen before, and they were passing them around. I wasn't allowed to lay down or to stand up. I had to sit down uh, with my back straight, just going through the experience until it was over. We could go out to the bathroom, but I didn't actually have to go at any point. I was told that if I had to throw up, I should do it in front of me in the dirt where someone would pass to clean it up. Useful information because I did throw up several times around 1 hour after consumption. So after emptying my stomach, I started feeling more lightheaded, a little bit dizzy, but not nauseous anymore, and very, very calm. I felt like everything was okay there, and there was something, someone else with me. Not like all of the other people around me, but something entirely different. I actually forgot about everyone else in the tent, and I had started having a mental conversation with this entity, this god, maybe. I'm not sure what to call it. It was telling me that everything was going to be okay. I had to be strong, and it was showing me things that I did want to see, but some things that I didn't want it to see. This all happened, by the way, in a language that I don't know. I'm not sure what. It wasn't Spanish, it wasn't English, but I understood it perfectly at the time. But I have a very hard time trying to remember exactly what was said with the conversation with that thing. So the fire started showing me things. I saw memories from my childhood and some more recent memories, several good and bad memories. I started crying. I felt like I was learning more from those experiences that I was seeing from what I originally had learned from them. The visuals were extremely intense with everything getting distorted and melting around the campfire. I started praying, like truly praying for the first time in probably my whole life. I asked for guidance in my life, for advice on my relationships, and while I didn't get a straight answer to all of my questions, I felt for the last few months after that more confident on my decisions and that I'm following my path, the correct path. I don't know how to explain that. But well, we kept eating the peyote, singing, and praying up until 8 a.m. I was able to feel the effects up till the middle of the day, around 1 p.m. I didn't feel tired at all during the whole next day, which was pretty interesting because I didn't sleep at all. I felt happy, connected with everyone. As soon as I got to my house, I wanted to hug my parents and tell them I love them. I felt very happy for the next couple of days. So when I first got into a TP, I thought that the experience was going to be kind of like LSD because it's like uh, my favorite psychedelic and probably the strongest substance that I've used that I had used up to that point. I'm not sure if the LSD or peyote is stronger. LSD is very strong in high doses, but it wasn't at all. Like LSD feels very electric, like mechanic. It feels like it has a lot of straight lines. I don't know how to explain that, but peyote is more like a huge, like bubbly feeling going all around everyone. It's definitely a lot more spiritual and quite less recreational than LSD. It causes a lot of nausea and very, very strong and vivid hallucinated memories. And that's how I tend to describe it. It was definitely not a recreational experience. It was definitely not fun in the traditional sense of the word, but I feel like it helped me a lot. I see it as a tool that I'll probably take again someday when I feel prepared to do it again. And I think that it has helped me turn into a better person. Actually, right now, peyote is like the only connection I have to any kind of spirituality. I will probably stay that way.
So I hope this video did well in differentiating natural psychedelics versus synthesized psychedelics and get you kind of this basic idea of what the difference is between the two. And there is really no clear difference, especially based on the last comparison. But there is somewhat of a trend when comparing or looking at natural psychedelics. They tend to be more sedating and whatnot, while synthesized, it can vary, honestly. Um, we would, we got to look into more of these if there's an actual real difference or they're just psychedelics, in all honesty, and that's kind of how I feel about it. But it is an interesting subject to look at and compare the two and see how one, comes from the earth and one is made in the lab. So if you guys want me to make a follow-up video on this, just let me know in the comments below. Like I said, if you enjoy these videos, like the video, subscribe, all that shit. It's been your boy, Someone That's No One, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.